Hello, Waya family, and welcome again from Kampala, Uganda. My name is Antonia, and I welcome you dearly to the Waya Collective live stream. Now, we have been doing this live stream for about 2 months now, mainly on YouTube, and we have decided to, piece by piece, open up to more and even bigger audiences. And that's why this time, for the very first time, we are also live on LinkedIn, which for me is very exciting. I used to be very active on LinkedIn and still am. So I'm very excited to also share this live stream in Waya Collective with an audience that is probably a bit outside of the usual crypto community. So maybe for our new guests, what is all of this really about? So maybe I give you a quick introduction into Waya Collective. Waya Collective is a crypto startup, and we are building the very first decentralized production system by creating a platform to create and finance franchises in Africa and beyond. And what does that really mean? So what can you imagine under this? So our whole concept is really based around localization of industries. We believe local industries are the better ones. And our goal is to create and build hundreds of factories and thousands of stores in the next decades. And all of these factories and stores are 100% locally owned and entirely localized. So that means factories really only supply the local market as long as it's efficient. And Waya Collective is really creating a robust system to put that into reality and create a system that can grow organically. If you want to know a bit more about it, you can read our white paper, visit our website, watch our last live streams, and we're sure you will really get into it. And for maybe some insight on what we're doing right now. So we are really starting in Uganda, building the very first garment factory in Uganda and the very first fashion brand for the local Ugandan market. And this is what we're working on right now and building the systems alongside that. And in this live stream, we really share our progress, our insights with our community. And why is that even so important? So today's live stream is really a lot about that. So if you're not already part of many crypto communities, crypto startups, this will definitely be, I think, a very good introduction into the whole topic. And today I am super excited to introduce to you our co-founder and DAO architect, Simon Peters. He has really been an advisor for us for a long time, and now he decided to join the core team, which makes me very happy and proud. So welcome, Simon. How are you doing?
Wonderful. I'm very excited to be here today, and I love the introduction. I love the energy, and it is 100% also the reason why I'm here and why I now am full-time member of the Waya core team, and I chose to become a co-founder. And I'm very, very excited to be here. I was even surprised because I've done so many live streams in my career, but this one is really a special one because we're now here to really talk about what is deep down, what are we believing in, and what kind of change we want to see in this world. And that's kind of a different thing than doing the normal live streams where you talk about a project or abstract things. No, but this is something very personal, and so I'm very excited to be here, and I could not imagine a better interview partner than you, Antonia. And I'm happy to jump right in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So a quick reminder for our audience, there's going to be an AMA, so Ask Me Anything session at the very end. So if you already have questions in mind during the conversation, you can just write them in the chat and we will answer them later. I already told our audience that you're our co-founder and DAO architect. And I think we'll go into the whole DAO and your role a bit later. But for now, I think what's really interesting is learning a bit more about your background and your experiences really leading to you now joining Waya?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and I think it's also quite interesting one because I think I have a very rather unusual life journey, if you say so. I think my journey really started back in university when I was studying at a university that's known in Germany, um, WHU, or the Weizmann School of Management, which is known as a very tough university. And it was there that in a few extracurricular activities, I got into making conferences. And for some reason, I stick to social entrepreneurship. Back in the day, I couldn't even articulate what it was, but it was kind of, to me, some of the ideas that they discussed and talked about were just so much um, yeah it if you think along this, if you think about impact and these things, you come to conclusions that you have to really reshuffle a lot of things. And I kind of often thought about also kind of Elon Musk and kind of Tesla and ideas of a magnitude that are more than just fixing an arbitrage problem, but are really about, okay, we gotta change the world, and we gotta do it now, and we gotta do it fast. And that fascinated me. And I bumped into a woman that I till today very admire. Her name is Bibuza Vissuman. She was a Zambian lady, and she was there in cooperation with another company called Africa Green Tech. They were building solar antennas, and that really was one of my earliest touch points with the whole Africa topic. And she was very charming and very charismatic, and she was like, "Oh, Simon, you do so nice conferences. Don't you want to do it in Zambia?" And me back then being that's more than half a decade ago, me being a very young and unexperienced person, I was like, yeah, why not? Like just going to Zambia, making conference. I had no idea, never been to the Global South before. I thought it was a student project, and I originally planned to go there for 6 weeks. And there was no way to do it in 6 weeks. I ended up to take out to interrupt my studies and stay there for over a year to just get this conference done, because I was in two ways. It was, for one, I'm a person that when I set my mind to it, I just do it. Like, there's no way, whatever cost it needs to be done. Um, but also because I really, when you grow up in a very privileged environment, and then you go to a place like the university that I've been to, where real money and status and all these things are no objective, they're in abundance there, and then you switch into a place like Zambia, where you have quite the opposite of access and of resources that make something with you, and I had no way to really articulate back then what it was, or what exactly I wanted to achieve. But it was very clear to me that after spending a time in Zambia and meeting so many smart people and so many inspiring entrepreneurs, like one of our advisors, Mudoba, and so many people, were just thought, okay, why is this such a struggle if there's so much human potential? And so I just couldn't give it up. There could have been a place for me after like 1 or 2 months to say, I'll go back home, go back to university, but I just couldn't. I wanted to kind of help with, or not even help, but kind of like I wanted to play my part. And our vision was really to break a venture capital into the continent. And in that position, I was it was a very interesting position for me, because what was about to learn was, first of all the richness of the startup ecosystem. So I screened, in my time back then, hundreds, if not thousands, of pitch decks of startups, but also talked to many VCs. And I was just asking them, okay, why don't you want to invest in Africa? What is the problem? And I think that, again, is a very interesting experience, because I, of course, got much more honest answers. I think the most um, other entrepreneurs get when they ask a VC, because I didn't ask as a local entrepreneur to an international VC, but I asked as a member of that international community behind closed doors. And many answers were, it's I just had to realize back then that a huge problem that venture capital in Africa has is that to when you look at it within the traditional framework of a VC, Africa is a non-starter, and that is kind of a reality that new VCs and certain impact in VCs try to change. But it is the problem goes much deeper. We have this issue with just cultural communication, but we also have and we will talk later about that, an issue which I can just frame in overall as governance. And so there are a lot of clashes in that, but it gave me that first insight into just living for a long time in Africa, living on my own, having an own company there, running it, having employees, really having this deep dive into a culture that back then was so foreign to me and now feels so close to me. And so that was a huge thing. And just this kind of like this huge contrast between my normal environment and being then in Zambia for such a long time. It taught me a lot, and I really found to have friends that I would by now call family from my time there in Zambia. So that was a huge part of my journey, but it was just one of the building blocks. So my next chapter was, after 1 year being in Zambia and Sensex Africa, the company we built, uh, moved away from focusing on brokering venture capital to, okay, we make conferences. Our conferences were quite successful, so we had the this we had the permanent secretary, we had the head of the Lusaka Stock Exchange, or representative, and I think in the recent conferences there were similar great guests. You can go still on the website sensexafrica.com.eu. I think now the website's still up. It's still a lot of things happening. But after a year, I decided that I would return to Germany to basically finish my studies, write my bachelor thesis, and so I returned to Europe and still had all these things that I saw in Africa, all my experiences. And I was just there with a big question mark about. I remember very well when I was coming back out of Zambia, I was buying me so many books about just what inequality is and where does it come from. Books like Why Nation Fail, but also other more progressive books about like what inequality and what maybe also race and all of these topics. Why the world is like it is, and I kept reading and reading and reading. And while I was studying, I got a call from another friend of mine that I meet during my Zambia times, and he was like, "Hey Simon, I raised this accelerator, incubator, company builder kind of setup for African startups. Don't you want to help me?" And you can bet I was immediately saying yes. And a few weeks later, I was back in Africa, in Nigeria, writing my bachelor thesis and working on a case that we analyze about agriculture supply chains, how to build agriculture supply chains, and that now played a lot into what I think what also will play into why long term. We discovered one thing, one very very fascinating thing, really, to the viewers who are interested in it, you can look it up. It's a fascinating story. Story goes like that: you can find in places in all around the African continent, you can find Coca-Cola. And this gets really ridiculous. Like you can go into villages that are very remote where you almost find nothing else, but you still find Coca-Cola. And so how did Coca-Cola do that? And so they built a system which is a self-organizing supply chain. So it is not a supply chain that is kind of top-down organized, but it's a supply chain that's based on a dealer model where I can sign up and then can run my own operations based on a certain set of rules. That completely fascinated me, because it's a way of like you give rules instead of instructions, and you get resources instead of of like very steer and narrow rules of what you can do, and that just fascinated me, and also because it worked so well, and so we looked at that agriculture supply chain, and we thought, okay, that might work, and so we spent half a year working around that case, and that also what was also a very, very important experience to me, I think, was Zambia is a very peaceful country. It's if not one of the most beautiful, peaceful countries I've ever been to in my life. Like it scores very high on just peace. I have no other way to say that. Like the Zambian ecosystem is beautiful and very assuring. And when you look to a country like Nigeria, even though it's on the same continent, of course, that people often say Africa. And just if you compare Zambia and Nigeria, you see like how much of a stretch that the one term is, because Zambia and Nigeria have almost nothing in common. It's a very different mentality. It's a very different way of working. It's a very different problem set that you encounter in a place like Nigeria. Um, but yet Nigeria also completely fascinated me. The power that you like. Nigeria is a very interesting case because you have such a huge this huge difference between rich and poor, even stronger than you have in Zambia, and you have this ultra competitive mood of working, and we really wanted to build this self-organizing supply chain, and basically we really learned how hard the market is. So what we did in Zambia was follow up attraction and quite a good success. Zambia, what we did in Nigeria wasn't really followed up by successful business in the end, because for one, our market was extremely hard, and like I don't want to come up with stories, but when you will hear a lot of stories from Nigeria, and so that was mainly a learning experience as the other one. It was an in-depth learning experience of seeing, okay, what can you not do, and what are wrong approaches when you come into a market and when you cooperate with people. So that was just huge. In the end, the main thing that really ended that project was actually not at all on ground related, but it was shareholder related. But sometimes it's not everybody, and that kind of directly back connects to what I was saying earlier about Zambia. There's investors have a huge problem with having assets across the African continent, because they have their own ideas, they have their own risk reward systems, and they just don't feel so much committed when you're out of Europe. Like you always carry your big bags of money around and think where you can deploy with the best return on investment, and that sometimes is not the right mentality that you need when you want to build something long term, and I think that has been a problem. And then I returned to Europe once more, and at that time I was really in a predicament, because I'd been twice to Africa, and I'd fallen completely in love with just opportunities, what else you could do, but also with the people I met. Also, by now my partner was by then African, so I really had that problem that I emotionally and intellectually was very much invested into the African continent, but I also realized that um, that was very hard to build anything sustainable in Europe, in Africa, because you need to find this balance between, okay, um, resources but also payoff, and the structural problems. And I was a bit, I don't want to say, yeah, I was thinking a lot about how you could solve these problems. And by then, for now, I just thought maybe a lot of these venture capitalists are just right, and it's not really possible to build something lasting. And then I kind of focused inwards, and went into crypto, and that was very interesting, because crypto changed about everything. Um, because what I saw in crypto was all the problems that were so massive, and that all the venture capitalists had pointed out, and so many entrepreneurs had told me about, and were desperate in solving. Um, when I looked into crypto, I found the solution is almost obvious to it. Like when we talk about governance, when we talk about liquidity, when we talk about knowledge sharing, all these things now that were extremely difficult when we are working in Nigeria and Zambia. Um, Crypto delivered a solution on top of it, and for me it was very obvious, because I tried to really solve these problems before, and now building products in crypto and understanding how decentralization work, and understanding how blockchain can really get trust into a system. It was really like a wake up moment. Like I was looking for something, and then it just appeared in front of me. And yeah, I think that is the story in rather short. It has these three chapters: Zambia, Nigeria, and then 2 years working in crypto between Frankfurt and Berlin. And yeah, I hope that kind of surrounds that, or kind of like gives a good summary of my background and my past, and where I've worked. I think I could talk another time, a long time, just about what we did at Decus, but I don't want to go too long about that.
Yeah, I think you could probably tell another 20 minutes. But yeah, I think it's quite interesting how, like, it's funny how, like, your experiences were also very similar to mine in a way. So I think also my idea, also coming from a very different or very similar background as yours, going to Uganda, was like, I also saw this issue. Okay, there's like the venture capital needed, and it's just not there. And why is it like, why is all of this potential here, and this potential excites you so much, but on the other hand, it's like, why is it not working?
Yeah.
And then you find out, and then you spend time, and then you're like, oh, there's actually a lot of issues. And yeah, I think you also told me that it gets frustrating, and it definitely does. It's yeah, but crypto, I think, also is such a beautiful, it's a beautiful way to kind of solve, or a beautiful outlook in how we can actually build something. And to me personally, it gives me a lot of hope that we can actually create something, and this is what we want to do with Waya, that is very powerful, and that is not like, okay, Africa will catch up to the rest of the world, but we can create something that is even much better in terms of more sustainable, more fair, more equitable, and even more efficient. And I mean, the world changes so rapidly. There's no reason we can't do that in Africa, but it really takes, yeah, as I think we've both seen, a lot of determination and yeah, and things. If you would maybe like, can you kind of tell like the biggest three learnings that you took from your time in Zambia and Nigeria?
Number one, and that's very important, listen. There's nothing worse than people coming up with solutions and think and they have to
Mm-hmm.
want to force it upon people. And that is true for, just casual startup being, wherever you do it. But it is especially true when you work in emerging markets. People often have that idea that you're smarter than the rest. We don't. Listening is the number one. Listen very carefully about what is happening and what people need and what are things that people don't need. And so the number one is really listening. The second one is I think is very closely related to that, but it's this exploring things together. Like even if you've listened and you have a good idea, don't start building it. Try to build together with people, and then try to have no your reservations about your own idea. Like really try to explore together and kind of continue that listening process after your find of your original analysis into the building process. So really explore together. And I think that the last one is, and that's I think is a very hard one to copy because you can only feel it. That is have, and it's kind of subsidizing the first two, respect. And I think that's something where it's hard. A lot of people say that, but it's really hard to feel always and towards everybody respectful. And I want to give a few examples to that because I had these opportunities. When sometimes you meet people and you would dismiss them because of whatever, but sometimes it's especially these people who can give you clues about key observations, but you can only validate them or value them if you come with a non-judgmental mindset. So it's listening, it is exploring together, and it's like having the utmost of respect for everybody in every situation wherever you might find them. And I think when you have that, I think you can work with a lot of people very good, because in that moment you find that local, and it was local, I mean, like really like, okay, where are our values, what we can connect, and really work on that. And I think these are the three most important values for me, and it's kind of a mixture between, it's basically humanism and but also lean. You have to combine these two things, and I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, yeah, I really agree. I think if you're so privileged, and we both of us coming to African countries definitely are very privileged. Like it's even more important to keep your head down in a way and be just really really humble, and yeah, just accept that things are different, and
Yeah.
maybe not the most obvious conclusions are the right ones. Um, yeah, really really awesome. So how did all of these experiences really lead to Waya? Like, what is really the story behind you and now Waya?
Yeah, I think it's really about that crypto part. So when I started working on with Decos, I was building a banking grade wallet system, so non-custody custody wallet systems. And that was now a moment when two things happened. I think I started advising you, and you were back in the day had this idea of building this network of decentralized farmers, decentralized serious. And that is, I say no farmers because what hit me back in the day, it was exactly what we're trying to build in Nigeria, with this Coca-Cola principle of self-organizing networks. And now that really excited me because first of all, it was something that I already knew, and then I also now, because it was in crypto, I knew exactly why that thing back in the time failed and what it should have had for it to be successful. And that was something where I started to be really intrigued. And in the beginning, I was, of course, very, very much in my current position as CEO of another of corporate startup, building for my shareholders and investors, and it was very interesting. But then I just saw you being why having such an intense learning curve. When you build startups or companies in general, at one point you start to have a certain style. And what I really love from the first day on, just advising you and observing you, was your commitment to having a lean method, to really to be brutally honest about what is reality and what isn't, and going through that. And I think over the time, I fall more and more in love with the team behind Wire, with the values and with the straightforward commitment that you have. And then at one point, I think it was, um, yeah, at one point I realized that I could, of course, do a lot of other things, but if I have to choose the one company that I want to build in my life, that's why. And that is why, because it combines all my learnings, all my values, all my experience into one machine. And yeah, and of course, because I've experienced you as a leader. I've worked across a lot of different leaders. I have been a leader myself and managed teams, and I understand what makes good leadership, or I've found for myself what I think makes good leadership, and you can find all of it. So I, at one point, I just said, I have to work for you. I have to work on that project, and so I let it all down. Basically, gave up my current life, and on the 20th, very soon, we'll be with you in Uganda to start working on Wire.
Yeah, I'm very honored, first of all. Very, yeah, I'm super happy because for me, I mean, you have been an advisor for quite some time, and I think we met actually right before I actually went for the first time for a longer time to Africa, and I had like you probably before you went, like I had a lot of ideas. I had like very naive probably, being like, okay, there's so much potential. I'm gonna build. I remember I wanted to build like a VC fund in Uganda, and I was like, it's gonna be
Yeah,
so
we talked
easy.
about
It's
that.
gonna
Yeah,
be like
yeah,
so yeah, and you already made all of these experiences. So I know I always got back to you and was like, Simon, look what I've created. Is it
yeah,
is it not good? And you were like, um, yeah. So
yeah.
really, I think good relationships that we've built, and also because we just made all of these similar experiences. And yeah, now coming back together, and I think like for me, you really brought a lot to this part of blockchain in, and I think that I wanted Wire Collective always to be a tech company, and I'm very eager to build technology. Obviously, what the future is, and when I had this thing in mind of, okay, I want to, I saw the same problems like you, and I saw this use case of fashion, and there's thousands of tailors who are not um, as efficient and who are not creating as much as they could. um, I was like, there has to be a solution for this, and I also saw this decentralized thing in my mind, but I didn't really know how to make it a real tech company, and I think then really brought into that component of crypto, and I just also fell in love with it, and therefore I think it's we're definitely going to build really really amazing things.
Absolutely. And I just want to jump in here because you know what is one of the things that fascinates me most about Wire, and it's very important that if people take anything from this live stream or this one thing, is that what crypto empowers us to do is to make things fair. And not fair like fair trade. Like there's different things to that word. No problem is fair trade, but it fair in a sense that you can delegate, you can restructure how power is organized. And you can often talk about what is fair, what is inclusion, what is not inclusion. I have a very strong feeling about that, and it's inclusion if you distribute power to people. And it in crypto gives us now this new way in designing power within economic system, and power goes over value, so controlling value. And what Wire tries to do, really, is to kind of create this decentralized production network and distribute power that is also wealth across the entirety of the system to the people who are highly committed in driving it. And I think that is the part about why, and that is why it also really, why is at its core a DAO. So I'm extremely happy to build Wire, and I will do whatever in my life to make it happen. But I know that in 10, in 20 years, we won't anymore need it because it's a system that can hold itself, and it is a system that is owned by the people working in it. And I think this vision goes also much beyond Africa, if you really think it to an end. For now, it is Uganda, and that is good, and it's fine, it is right so, and we'll do whatever is needed to build it there. But this, like, power is money, and the big money lies in industry. And so that connection is very, very strong. And of course, we can make it so efficient. So I want to make that point, because that is why crypto is so important. That's because a lot of people ask me, like, what is the use case of crypto? Can you not do it on a centralized database? Yes, you can. But then the power is in the center, and we don't want that. And as long as in a moment you want to deal with power in a better way, that is the moment where you need crypto. And I just wanted to get that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because also, I mean, we have a huge vision. We want to build hundreds of factories and thousands of stores, and we really have to ask ourselves, what do we want that to look like? A lot of these Asian countries where, workers are exploited and they have no power, and it's really creating a worse place than it was before. And I think it is really our obligation to do it right, to do it better. And crypto really has so many advantages. But yeah, that actually leads us really to your role and to Waya Collective as a DAO. I think that is really what a DAO is. And you can't just, crypto is not, or blockchain is not the solution to everything. It's not just, you sprinkle like a bit of blockchain in and then it's going to be fair and all and efficient. That's definitely not how it works. And that's really why we have you. So yeah, maybe for those who, not yet maybe know what even a DAO is. So we consider Waya Collective not to be a normal company in the normal sense, but a DAO. So how would you describe a DAO in the most easy way?
I would put the word and cut a word into and analyze every word. So it's a decentralized, autonomous organization. So first of all, is decentralized. So that I personally always read in a sense of there's no single server that you can destroy to take the system down, but it's also that ownership and thus control is decentralized in a system, opposed to having a system where you just have one powerful center. To this decentralized, I really love the quote from Vitalik Buterin. I know with Cardano, we love everybody, but I think this quote is just amazing about Uber, kind of like that idea that in normal disruption, right? You take away of all the blue collar workers, and now in decentralization, you take away with all the jobs of the white collar workers, so of the center of the management, basically. So decentralization is really about that kind of moving away from these, it's technical decentralization, but also systemic decentralization away from these power centers. The autonomous is also very important. So the center where normal management would have been, there's now a machine. And so there's a decentralized machine that also has this organization that has a part that is human. And so now you have this autonomous, what does everything, like the big automat, that is now governed in a decentralized way, and has an organization that updates it and that takes care of it. I think these are kind of the three elements that a DAO has to have to be kind of a real DAO. And I think maybe another way how you can also see DAOs, and I want to be like, there's this tweet or this meme going around, there are no DAO experts, and I kind of do agree to that. It's a lot of different threads that we're working on. But the other idea is that while you're in traditional companies, you would have shareholders that hire management to exploit workers and resources. And that you can imagine that it's three very distinct Venn diagrams. Now you move these Venn diagrams together, and now you have shareholders who are kind of also customers and who are also employees. So this strict differentiation of exploitation kind of falls apart, because now you have a community, you have a collective, however you want to call it, of people very engaged in something. And of course it works very well when you look, for example, at DEXs, right? I have a token, so I could make that case if I want to. I'm somewhat of a shareholder, kind of. I don't want to get into an argument with the SEC, but it's kind of something like that. But that person, because it uses now also the token to farm liquidity, is also a customer because it uses that service, and now that completely differently aligns incentives, right? Where back in the day I would have a shareholder class that is not interested at all in the quality of the product but only profits, and now this one is moved together, so you have directly an interest of the shareholders in working conditions and also the quality of the product. So this is it's a shift in attitude to how do we have separated our society in different classes. So that is huge. And so that is kind of like the DAO in general, all the topics, and maybe maybe what makes Waya a DAO is really that they are the Wire is made up of collectives. In each collective is an autonomous cell of up to 150 people that can run their business. What kind of business that is, that I think that these are the franchises that we talk about. But let's just keep it that is a business. So these wire collectives, and you could have an infinite number of them. They run their business, and they have access to a few building blocks that make Wire successful. And the first building block of that is governance. And governance is huge because governance is yet ensures compatibility with, for example, an investor, just bookkeeping, just having your straight book, just being very sure about where every single cent went. But also it guarantees the quality of life within the organization of a collective, right? Like I saw this huge shitstorm, very, very fitting, hi from Nigeria in the chat. There was this rant going on the Nigerian Twitter about like horrible bosses. And to me, that's also a governance question, right? Like, what is the deal that employees and management make out, right? That's governance, and that controls. And governance is really powerful. It's only damn powerful if that structure of governance controls the value, controls the money in the system, which then again only goes if you have it on chain. So imagine that very broken down. You have a wallet, there's cash in, because you control the cash, you control the organization. So, and now we can design a governance system how and why people should control that cash. And so that is the governance layer, and that also controls three other layers, which is our the liquidity protocol. So we have talked all about the VC part and why it's so hard to get cash to Africa and all of these things. So we want to solve that very plain forward. When you have a wire collective, you're part of a global financial system. You're not excluded just by living somewhere else around the world, which is not a prime destination because you're not living alone. Now, that is one digital realm in which we all are, and we all have the same access to it, to the liquidity protocol. We have the KSP, very similar to USP, which is the knowledge sharing protocol, which kind of makes these franchises work. And the last thing is we have the AIM, the automated inventory management system, which because we trace all products and we trace the relationship between the different collectives, provides trust. And one other challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs face around the continent is when you look at companies, they're often conglomerates, they're completely integrated with the different parts of the value chain because they don't really trust other companies. And that's a problem because good companies kind of do one thing and focus really on that one thing. And so we allow people really to focus again on that because they can trust each other. And it's very important to understand that these systems are not owned by us. These collectives, they're not owned by us. It's not that thing like it's not a subsidiary in that sense, right? It is an autonomous collective. It's an autonomous company set up by people who want it and who kind of agree to the fundamental value codex of Wire and then have access to these systems. And just that idea that I now can go wherever I am in the world, and set up a business, and I have access not to my, to my local resources, but I get access to this global network of resources. And there's no difference between me being in Congo or me being in London. And that is really that where we believe the way can really change the world, because it gives people the way to basically move away without moving away, but moving into the digital realm from the resource. Of course, the other challenges like plan forward security and all of that thing, but the fundamental idea is that. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I find most exciting about it, or how I would also describe it, is you can build a governance, which is basically a set of algorithms that everyone kind of decides over. How does this really look like? And this whole DAO is really just a set, a collection of these algorithms. But it's not just us. Of course, we now, the custodians, you could say, of Wire Collective, we initiate them, but people also have to come on. And once they're initiated, everyone can really decide on them. So it's really a democratic way of creating our world. And it's not just one few people at the top who can really decide, what a worker is being paid or something like that, but everyone can add to that. Even the workers and also the entrepreneurs building these factories, building these stores, and so on. And this kind of construct is really, it gives so much like robustness, because no matter who comes on top or who leads it, first of all, there is no real leader, so you don't have to trust that the next person leading it will also be nice and good and decide good decisions for everyone. There is no such thing. Everyone decides, and over time we can just perfect these algorithms together and make them better. And that also gives us now all of these opportunities, like you talked about. We can share knowledge much better. So it is not one small set of people who decide, okay, this is now this brand, for example, these are the products that we're going to make, this is the direction we're going to take. Everyone can add to it, and everyone can share, and everyone can also receive to it. And if I, for example, that's the knowledge sharing protocol, if I now in my factory in Uganda, for example, I learn that, okay, this is maybe the better way to do a certain thing, or this is maybe how I create my specific factory, and I learn that it's really good, I can add this knowledge to this knowledge sharing network. Other people can use it, and I'm even getting rewarded, and that really gives us like an organism that really learns from the roots. And I also believe that we can make much better decisions basically all over the network, because it's not, it's, I always say, like, the system that we've now built with these very big organizations which have one deciding board, they are the most efficient system that we have built so far, because you can make fast decisions. But I think how it has developed, we're seeing so many disadvantages, and we also see that it's actually not the most efficient way to have one person decide, but to actually build these systems. And we now have the chance with blockchain to create a system where everyone can decide and add in a very efficient way. And I mean, that also gives us now the opportunity to have decentralized financing, to have, everyone can get financing to the same rate. It's not like you have no access to it. Like in many African countries, it's almost like it's almost, you can't get financing it, or it's so expensive that it's going to eat all of your revenues, all of your profits. So it's just, there's so many things in the structures that on the African continent there's so much to build, but also in the rest of the world. So also I think for many people living in Africa who think, oh, that everything is perfect in Europe and the US or wherever, no, it's definitely not that way. And we can create systems in Africa, on the African continent, that are much better using blockchain, and that can spread really around the world. And I think that is what the DAO is really the platform for.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, and I think also our listeners should know. So we kicked it off, the idea of the Wire Collective always also focus on Africa, but we had, I think, a few times now in our Discord, US Americans jumping in and were like, actually, we would also want that, somewhere in South Dakota somewhere, and I think that's the case. I think that the Wire model could work all around the world. I think that, but I'm very comfortable with that placement in Uganda for now, because it's also about finding a niche and finding a place where it can first work and where it can run, but that long-term scale over the globe is very clear to me. Also because, and you said it, I think a lot of people take time to appreciate that, the idea of the knowledge sharing protocol. If you think about incentives to innovate, they're pretty screwed right now. I mean, you have kind of these ideas that people, the VC myth, so to say. You have a smart guy who builds that thing and then solves so many problems, gets rich. But when you think about that, most of the time, you have a lot of programmers who produce incredible amounts of intellectual property, but actually it's never really theirs, right? They give it into the company and receive a salary. And the idea behind Wire is really that everybody can innovate, that there's one shared database to everybody, to which everyone has access to, and you get royalties on whatever intellectual property you have produced whenever it has been used by another person to produce a profit. So in that moment, you really move away from this, hey, I create my intellectual property, where just I use it for my personal advantage and I'm not sharing it with anyone else, towards a world where you can give that intellectual property into that cloud of intellectual property, and you could reward it as more people are using it. So we try to move away from a mentality of scarcity and exclusion towards a mentality of sharing and abundance. And I think that is a fundamental shift. And also I want to make that clear, that it's also a shift that is not only unique to within Wire, but it's also very particular to crypto, right? Like when you think about that, I make now a big jump, but if you think now about that, all like most of the cash that we have in our normal world is based on credit, so on debt, versus in crypto, we create a lot of values. People accuse us of creating values in air. I would disagree. That's not thin air. That is trust that has been extended. So it's a different thing, and I think the same kind of mentality, instead of, okay, we limit access and is exclude people, moving, okay, we do trust people and we do give these things out and we say everybody can innovate. And I have one conviction that is so clear to me. I believe if we can get it going, if we can get enough collectors working on it and enough intellectual property, right, property into our knowledge sharing protocol, I think we will have an extremely um, further escalating rate of innovation. I can imagine that innovation will speed so much up
Yeah.
in this world, because you have these groups of 150 people where everybody knows everybody. You have now knowledge flowing into, you have very short distance of communication. You can try out new things extremely fast. So that means that, as you face it, I believe if we get it right, Wire will be owned by the people, and Wire will produce innovation like few things we have seen around this world, and it will be owned in this distributed manner. So no, I think Wire, and this is why I say, which is why I couldn't not do anything else. I think this is a chance that we have, and we can't do it alone, right? Like this must be very clear. Antonia and I, we're so focused and so amazed, but this is really, I mean, we're not only talking to each other, but we're talking to the viewers and the listeners, right? We can't do it alone. We had an idea and we kind of keep pushing it, but we need to have people in our collectives to work with that and believe in it, and kind of make it a reality. And maybe it's too early to already promote, to apply for Omega, but um, yeah, I,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's we're really excited about how we're going to build it. We have a big vision. I think what's also interesting is to see, how do we build it now? Because this is really the seed of it, and also it can make. Um, I think it really makes it very understandable of the culture that we're trying to develop, and we want to build lean. I think that's something that we really strive towards at Wire Collective, and that's why we're starting small. Now I'm very excited and focused on building now this brand and actually creating products and brands for African consumers that really fulfill their needs, and on the other hand, to actually build these efficient factories in Africa, really taking using and enabling all of these people here to really create products and factories and value that is just as good, maybe better than anywhere else in the world. And I think that is something that's been lacking. But now, of course, now that we have you and you're our DAO architect, so how do you go about it? So what is your starting point in really building the DAO, the Waya DAO?
very straightforward. Back to my values, listening. So that is not, and I want to be very transparent about that. It's not that we have right now the perfect plan that has every single detail already discussed and found out. No, what we do is, uh, we really see it as a prototyping and a lean process. And so one of the main things that we do, so we do right now build two collectors. I was teasing that one is called Omega, the other one is called Alpha. We choose the name because it's in the end it's the tension between these two learnings which will massively influence how the exact final Waya DAO will look like. So, and I will first explain each of the collectors and why they matter in our planning and our development of the DAO. Omega, I start with Omega because it's kind of like, to the crypto people, will be the easier one to understand. Omega is what I would call the classical Waya DAO. So we have a Discord, we have people get into working with us, and these people are kind of like, they help us on a global virtual level to build the DAO. So it's about support, it's about tech developments, but all these things that happen very easily virtually. And the goal is to get 150 people in it and let them work. And it's not about just having 150 people work, but kind of build this extremely high performing group of people that really work well together. And we and then find out how do we can best organize these people without a direct center and still being extraordinary performing in what they're trying to do. So it's not only about like having a nice world without centers. No, stuff also needs to get done. Execution is a huge point on that. So how do you build a system that is still really resilient and effective to execute things, right? We're not doing it alone. So we have this partner that I'm very, very bullish about, Resource for Humans, a wonderful company that has been building networking organizations for the last almost 10 years. And we work with them to build this collective Omega. And one day, the final vision is that Omega will kind of replace us, so that Omega will be that one collective that kind of takes care of the tech development, of the dApps and all of it. So that's what we're trying to do. And if you're interested in that, you can apply for that. That's very open for anybody around the world who wants to apply. You can apply, and then you get into that system, and you will meet me again. And the second collective that we're building is Collective Alpha in Uganda, which is these others. How do you manage your process in that way? How do you manage these factories, and how do you govern them optimally? Because of course, and that needs to be understood, different groups you govern in different ways, right? Like if you have a group of under 50 people, software developers that work remote all around the world, they will need a different style of leadership and also a different way of registering contributions than a group of factory line workers. It's just a very different world, and why it needs to accommodate both. So what we're trying to do right now is determine the first principles. So the first principle means what does really matter here? What is the things that really make or break the system? And then we try to articulate them and build paper-based models. So how could that thing work? And then capture it with the first software product and then test that again. So it's really about, I think, especially for the next 3 months, we're really in that very early in that prototyping phase. How could it work? And we use a lot of tools that are already existing to capture these things and to really work lean, so not to over-engineer. And now over time, we will then use these two models, Omega and Alpha, to make them template collectives. Okay, how do we reproduce this producing collective very easily? And then we will copy that from Uganda to Zambia, and maybe Omega into a different area of building on the tech DAO, so just building the on-chain entity, so to say. And yes, so that is really the two things, and maybe also to the title DAO architecture. I know it's a very unorthodox title, but we also did that really intentionally because you, Antonio, are CEO, and Matthias is our CPO, which is very classical title, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Product Officer. But people need to understand that these are very, like, every title has a purpose, right? Like, and your purpose is to be understood. My title is really because what it is. It's about for crypto people to be understood. That I look into that, and when everybody has input, has ideas, has inquiry, maybe about DAO tooling, anything, I'm the person to approach, and I think that is the signal. And I'm very, very happy to talk to everybody in the ecosystem and also help and share. I think thinking about DAOs and how DAOs could really work is a topic that will keep us busy for the next 5 years. It's not an easy topic. If you're seriously interested into building a better way how people can cooperate and not only copy paste the existing top down hierarchies, you have to use a lot of brain power and have to do experiments and have to look into history, what has worked, what hasn't worked. And if you actually look into history, and a lot of people don't understand that, this idea of having decentralized organization, which before that were called not networking organization, it's not a new idea. It's actually HP very early on. Hewlett Packard was a network organization back in the day when they were outperforming everybody else. Spotify is one to my knowledge. Airbnb is one to my knowledge. So if you would call them DAOs, right? Like nobody, because they're not on chain, right? But if you would actually, they are built along very similar lines, and these companies are not, these companies are powerful companies, right? Like companies that we use every day, companies that are in our lives, and companies who are absolutely extraordinary in developing good products. So that it's possible, that is 100% clear. But I tell you, you need to have the diligence to really think, okay, how have these companies built? What are the learnings? What are the things that have been stopped doing? And this is what we really put in together, put into Wire. But one last thing about that, you also have to acknowledge that these companies are the best employers in the world, right? Airbnb has more applicants than Harvard, so if you can build it, you will build something really meaningful where people feel empowered because they know they have power, and it is a shared endeavor. And that is why we also call it collective, because that is the fundamental kind of like the emotion that we want to share about around these autonomous businesses. Yeah, I think that is kind of a good summary.
Yeah,
For me, my title. I also see we're running towards the end of the time, but went fast.
absolutely. It did, for sure, for sure. I think what for us, I think what the difference really is in kind of the mentality, it's not top down. It's not there's someone telling me what to do, what to work on, and I get a salary and they can throw me out when they want. It's more about we have a goal, and if anyone has an idea, if anyone has resources to achieve that goal, they can decide how they can contribute and they will be rewarded. And it's really about knowing the value of everyone and that everyone can really grow their potential and yeah, that that these really hierarchical power structures are really synthetic in a way, and they might bring it to some level of efficiency, but they're definitely not the most efficient. And I think, yeah, history has shown us that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Do we have time for one sentence? Because I would add one thing to it.
Absolutely. I'm just saying that there is again the AMA session, so we don't have any questions in the chat right now. But if you have any questions, please write them. And yeah, you can finish your sentence while people are writing their questions.
Another very innovative idea of Wire is that and this is an hypothesis, so it's not that we 100% will do it. The number is just the numbers is point to start, but the idea is that every one of these nodes, these collectives that the Wire is made of, has a hard cap at 150 people. A lot of people are like, will that not limit you? Are there not issues with that? And I don't think it will limit us, but before I want to really go why we do it. And there's this idea about centralized ownership, of centralized control over large systems, that they tend not to make decisions in necessarily in the favor of the public good. So kind of, what did I just say? Large organizations, as larger do they get, they tend to have leadership that doesn't make decision in the interest of the majority. And that is just go through history. Like, go through history and read all the big empires, read about all of them, all the big companies, and you will find out that in the end, it often tend towards these small groups that are super powerful to kind of helping themselves the most. And that's interesting because there's one word that you could call it. You can call it just accumulation of power. You could call it capitalism, or you could call it corruption. Like, they are depending on different situation. There are different words for that, and there are different extents of doing. But there is this trend. And there's this idea that it's a very simple one. People you will treat differently than people you don't know. It's very hard to be unfair to a person that is dear to your heart. And that is, again, you can go and just look out people that you think are interesting, maybe people who fit into that description, and you will see that most of the time treat their families and their belongings very well. And I think that is beautiful. And I think we should be much more honest about human nature. Humans that I know are different than humans that I don't know. And what why I really try experimentally try or the underlying assumption is that governance in groups are most stable if they have social cohesion. What does that mean? Social cohesion is the feeling of we belong together as a group. And if we can create this belonging as a group in one of these collectives, and we can then we can also replicate it. And that is why we keep it stable. And that is a system. I'm not saying there will never be corruption, right? Like I'm sure there will, but the extent of corruption will always be much more limited because I have that social connection. I have that social accountability. Like I will. I really love the common power to do people aim. And yeah, exactly that is. And you can enforce power only if I can hold the person that has power over me to account, right? If I know where that person is living. But right now we've built system, right? You have no idea who are the people. And I mean, you literally sometimes don't know who are the people in power, right? Because they're hidden in bureaucracy and they're hidden in all these administration. But if you know, okay, we're a collective of 150 people, you have that thing of okay, um, I know who is in charge here, right? Like, and of course, then there's this other level of we can call it a micro and a macro level. The micro level is always the collective, and the macro level is really okay. These are the dApps. These are it's the tech around it. Um, but even there, I know who to approach, right? It's not this, sometimes, and this is literally true for everywhere around the world. You walk around and you see something that is in a terrible bad shape. You're asking yourself, why is that? Who is responsible for it? And most of the time, when you will ask, you will get into a circle of responsibility denial, and that's horrible. And I think a very easy way of just avoiding that categorically is saying one unit has a fixed number of people, and there's one person responsible. There's one kind of chief in charge who is there, and people know that person, and people can approach it. And if you have that, and I call it now, God forgive me, I call it the Putin factor. If you have somebody who just decides to be like, okay, guys, I'm gonna make you a hard time, whatever you do, this is also just limited to 150 people, and it will never extend to more people. And maybe through the supply chains, it could affect a little bit more people, but there is this limit that we set. And I think it's really important to be remember that we're humans, and that we're also mindful of the limitations that we have as humans. We are social beings. Um, should a DAO restrict who can join? I love that question. Um, yes. So if you set up your own collective, a sub-collective with 150 people, you should have the ability to decide who and who cannot go in. Every person always needs to have the right to leave, right? That is absolutely, every person should always at any moment have the right to leave, but every collective should also be able to limit who can enter. It's the whole story, right? I have my family, I have my home, and I know which guests I want and which I don't, and I think that should be limited. But I think if you have a person that maybe cannot join a collective, right, that person should also have, if it fulfills all requirements, the opportunity to set up down. But no, if you have something valuable, like a family, you ought to protect it, and that means to restrict access to it to a certain level. But yeah, but then you can replicate it, and other people can build their own
Yeah.
system and their own houses. I hope that's answering the
Yeah.
question.
And I think it is also dependent, how do you restrict them? Like, is it just a person who is like, I don't like you, I don't like you, you can't be part of it? Or is it really a system that's like, these are the requirements, because we have to be competitive, we have to have an international standard, we also have to have um, a standard in terms of like the culture. So not everyone will naturally fit into that, but there can be these rules, and that again is like the set of algorithms that can decide that, and also of course about the people. Um, but yeah,
Okay.
there's another
The KYC
question.
question. Okay, okay,
Or
that's
will
a
there be
dicey
KYC?
question. That's a dicey question. I'm gonna paint around it. So first of all, it really depends on what do you mean by KYC. So first of all, I explain what I understand. The KYC, to know your customer, process is when you have a regulated financial institution and provide you a customer, and you want to be customer, you want to have a bank account with, for example, a German bank. You have to prove that you're a German citizen. You have to show your passport. You have to show that you're not related to any criminal family, etc., etc. So that's the KYC. Um, there is why I will always, and that is of course, we will always comply to laws because we have to. But um, right now, or in general, I wanna add a second thought to that, and then I think we wanna move on to the question because it's a dicey question. Is that if you think about what crypto does, right? Crypto is this financial network or this financial world where everybody has equal access to. KYC is the opposite, right? KYC is the wall around the garden. KYC is a tool to exclude people. And that I'm not saying that. That is literally what it is, right? It is saying that one person does not deserve a bank account, right? Because that person lives in the wrong country or has the wrong family. And I think that in of itself is a very difficult concept. And there's a lot of other people who will get angry with me and say, no, KYC is to protect, AML and whatnot. And I agree to that. I'm not saying that's not the case. But I'm also saying that KYC is the wall around the garden, and crypto originally wanted to tear down that wall. So um, we'll always comply to law, but there needs to be a way how that law is not breaking crypto. And I think that we will figure that out. I'm very confident we will. But I leave it with that. So KYC is a dicey thing. It is a tool of exclusion, and that's why it's dicey. And crypto is the opposite. Um, yeah. Another question.
Yeah, there's some comments around the restriction of people. So definitely, Dave is saying you need to balance like-minded and
Yeah.
diversity. Absolutely, I think. And then Richard is also adding it should be based upon set requirements and could be done by voting. Definitely, I think
Yeah.
voting is this democratic factor, right?
Yeah, no, I think voting is very important. I think diversity is
Yeah.
absolutely key. And I think it is, again, it's like this, whenever you open a new collective, so again, there will be infinite amount of collectives, right? Then I think the people who kind of start a collective should have also the power to kind of design it. So I can absolutely see that there will be a collective, or one of many, where a group of young women comes together and say we want to be a woman collective. That's our thing. And then there will be another collective that says, okay, we want to have this other way of diversity. Or there's a collective of young men. I see it. I think there will be huge diversity within how you kind of build these collectives and how they will be run and what exactly the deal is. And also think you can imagine collectives as having different degrees of inequality within them, right? You could, for example, say, okay, the person within a collective shall earn like 10 times more than the lowest paying. And you maybe find a collective that says maybe we want to have it even further apart or smaller together, right? Maximum 3 times. So these are ideas that but it's very important. We don't want to, and we do not want to force any kind of these things on people. We want to give the tools that people can build it for themselves. Because if we enforce it, if we kind of like say that's the right way and no other way is correct, right, then we've broken with our first principle, right? Listen first. If I tell you what to do, I'm not listening. I've done something wrong. So we provide tools for you to design the kind of the economic relationship that you want to live with your fellow human beings in, and that, yeah. So I think that maybe summarize it well, and yeah.
Yeah, we call it the operation system. So we want to
Yeah.
build the operation system for these new industries. But on the other hand, as it is a DAO, this operation system can also be altered by everyone
Who is part of the DAO? Yeah, I want to
who's
add that
part
one.
of it.
Not
Absolutely
the
true.
people, not people outside of the DAO, right?
That's
That
true.
would, but yeah,
That's true, of course. But
but
everyone,
100%
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, and we also had so many discussion and debates internally about that. So you can believe these ideas are like they have been discussed and debated for hours and hours and hours over years. And I often love this one podcast that you did, Antonia, with Mutubu Ngoni a few years back. I don't know how many years back, but if everybody takes that time
Few
to actually
years.
look for that podcast and listen to it, like you will be shocked, because it's like all these topics that we are talking right now about why we're already years back then in Matoba's and Antonia's mind and also in mine, but we just didn't know how to express them correctly and how to connect them to crypto. But now, as half a decade has passed, it's all pretty obvious now. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no more questions, which means, well, I think we've talked long enough. Or is there anything else you want to share, Simon?
I found it a very wonderful live stream, and I'm looking forward to all the new ones that are coming. I also think it was a great idea
Yeah.
to stream it on LinkedIn. And thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for being such a grateful and wonderful leader, and looking forward to what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. You can, of course, rewatch it at any time. And maybe one thing that I want to add is the easiest way to join in building the Waya DAO right now, and so just join us and get into a deeper conversation, is really to join the community town hall every Thursday. So it happens in our Discord. It's at 4 p.m. UTC, 6 p.m. Central European time, and 7 p.m. East African time. So if you really want to get more into it, Simon is always hosting it, leading it, and this is the easiest way. If we now caught you, if you want to be part of the Waya DAO, if you want to contribute, just join there. All right, then I would say we're done, and I thank you everyone so much for joining. Bye.